Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Thomas Podcast, episode 41, I believe, of the tremendous show. And today I'm joined for the first of a double bill with Mr. John Cook. Hi, John. How you doing?
Hello. Episode 41.
I
Wow.
think, I think,
Oh,
yeah, we've got
bloody-
the 1 year anniversary coming up very soon, which is very.
Have you got anything special planned, or is
I,
it all
I,
sort of top secret?
it's top secret. I'll tell you when the recording's off.
He
I'll let,
has nothing planned.
if only. But no. So yeah. Also, this is a new thing for this channel. Is that I put this on YouTube now, so it's just visuals. It's just me and John. Wave. Hello.
Yeah, you get to see my delightful dining room. As friend of as friend of the show, Beef has pointed out in the past, I am the only person that appears to have a plain white ceramic plate on display. Most people, if they put a plate on display, there's a design on it or something like that. I don't know either.
There's nothing wrong.
Um,
There's nothing wrong with the basic white plate, mate. There's nothing wrong showing off a white plate.
yeah, you
I
also,
respect it.
yeah, in spite of lockdown, I'm still doing my washing. Um,
Well, at least that proves you've got standards, and that's the main.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
even if I'm not leaving the house, I can still wear clean clothes.
yeah. That's the main thing. You want to stay clean. The worst thing would be if Sparky became more clean than you. As a dog,
Oh,
you want to set an example.
Sparky is generally more clean than me, to be honest. He cleans on a very regular basis. Don't get me wrong. If I had the ability to clean myself the same way that he does, um, then I'd be doing it about 3 times an hour as well. But it's yeah. So he's pretty everything except his tongue. He's probably a lot cleaner than me.
Exactly. How are you then, mate? Because obviously, last time you were on the show, I believe, was all the way back maybe in September, maybe August, even for Robots of Death. So it's been a while. Obviously, you
Yeah,
popped up in watch alongs and the Christmas podcast, but in terms of a one-on-one situation, we haven't been able to chat in a while.
yeah. July, August time, I think was the last time. I think we recorded that. Yeah, we must have recorded that around July. I remember it being very hot. So
I shall quickly go back through the archives. Now,
I remember,
how are you doing, my friend?
how I'm not too bad. It feels very much like it's weird. It feels very much like we're in pretty much the same situation as we were then, to be honest. So, the only thing is it's a lot darker um, outside. So yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm gradually sort of ticking over and just keeping myself going, really. So having the opportunity to sort of rewatch and then talk about things like we're doing today and the watch alongs and stuff like that has been a nice little distraction at points. So yeah, I'm not too bad, my friend.
Glad to hear it. And also, I think for us, it's kind of nice to do this podcast type thing because we rarely kind of get our one-on-one time to chat. Like if we're ever chatting, we're normally in a Zoom full of people. So actually, the only times we do actually get kind of a
we
one-on-one chat is when we do this.
Yeah, we generally are surrounded by pissheads. When we sort of do these things. Well, they don't mind us saying that. They know
No,
full well that they're pissheads.
we've said
Um,
worse.
yeah, I mean, we'll probably say worse at points on this podcast. Um, but yeah, it's always nice to sort of catch up on a one-to-one basis because it is always a little bit different to when you've got a whole sort of crowd of you and everybody's struggling to get a bit of a word in from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, last time you were here as well, and the show actually got a really nice response online. Was obviously we talked about Robots of Death, which is great. Not gonna besmirch Robots of Death, but we also had a really nice chat about the whole accessibility gaming thing. Which whenever anyone listens to that, they would always drop me a line like, "Oh, I didn't think about games that way before." So yeah, I just that was a great chat. I mean, we probably won't be going in depth in that again today, but also you're on the show 2 times in the next 2 weeks. You're here next week as well.
I am, yeah, I am. I am here next week for the Royal Rumble Spectacular. I'm sure you don't mind me spoiling
No, no, not at all.
what
I'm
next week's show is going to be.
I'm hyped.
Where we will be discussing our love of the Rumble, making our Rumble predictions, and doubtless making absolute fools of ourselves.
Yes.
Not quite to the extent. I mean, hopefully not quite to the extent where either of us predicts Adam Pearce to actually win the Universal Championship. But let's see. Um,
I'm back in Hornswoggle for the Rumble. I reckon Hornswoggle's going to win the
yeah,
Hornswoggle versus Reigns at Mania 37.
without getting too much into it, I've got a few ideas, but I think yeah, we'll expand on it more
Yeah.
sort of next week. But
All
I do feel that the way they do the Rumble these days does leave you with a few more options than it used to, which is
yeah,
always good. That unpredictability is always nice. You know, they always used to say any one of the 30 men could win it, and that was never the case.
no, no.
You know, you were never going to have Coco Beware winning the Royal Rumble 1991.
Coco Beware should have won the Rumble though. He should have won the Rumble.
Yeah.
But I will say this, and while it's relevant, I thought last week's SmackDown was absolutely stellar. I don't know whether you watched it. I had just moved at that point, so I was sat on Thursday morning like, oh, I've got bugger all to do because I've moved back to Cardiff now, and I was like, oh well, I went on my BT app. I saw that the SmackDown was uploaded. I was like, I'll give it a shot because I hadn't. I'm very. I think we're very similar. I don't. I kind of keep up with WWE. I watch all the pay-per-views, but I don't watch it week to week religiously. Like sometimes I'll fast forward it or just get to the bits I care about.
I've got to say, I've actually been, for the last 6 months or so, I've actually been pretty religiously keeping up with SmackDown.
SmackDown's been
I think,
stellar. SmackDown's been
yeah,
stellar.
I think I made the point. I might have even tweeted it on. Sorry, I'm about to be presented with another squeaky toy. People, if you do hear occasional squeaks, actually, look, you can even see him on the YouTube. That's Sparky.
It's the legend that is Sparky. You know.
Yeah.
Don't
So
worry.
I might have even pack it.
Don't worry, mate. We had Richard's cat on the last episode come in and say
Did
hello.
it do the usual Richard's cat thing and just show its ass to the camera?
Yes, luckily though that one wasn't a part of the upload to YouTube thing, so
That's all good.
so
That's all good.
no
But yeah,
demonetization.
so yeah. Anyway, on to SmackDown. I mean, I think I sort of tweeted it last week. I said, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's working with Paul Heyman or if it's the fact that there's no physical crowd, but something has clicked in Roman that has just turned him into this absolutely stellar promo machine. You know, if there was one thing you could always fault with Roman, it was his mic work.
Yeah, I mean,
But
going
but
back,
since he's come back, he's really he's just bossing it. He's just absolutely bossing it. And you
yeah,
know, clearly they've put him with Heyman as a mouthpiece. But at the moment, it's like Heyman's just standing there not really doing much because Roman's doing all of his own talking, and he's just, you know, that gimmick that he's got at the moment, that kind of head of the table, the tribal chief. He's just they've something's clicked, and he's just found a way to do it. I think it's probably the lack of an actual physical crowd in an arena that's giving
yeah,
him confidence.
yeah. No, I'd agree.
It means that his voice carries a bit more. It means they've got a bit more control over sort of crowd noise and crowd volume, but it works. You know, there's a couple of people that have really benefited from the way that wrestling has had to be over the last year.
I mean, even Jey Uso has benefited from this Roman thing. But I think for Roman as well, like you were saying, that he's now become this promo machine. I mean, if I think maybe No Mercy 2018 when John Cena came back, and it was John Cena versus Roman Reigns, because now Roman was the big dog, and John Cena came back, and John Cena obliterated him on the microphone, you know, and now. You can imagine Roman, like people, whenever they always wanted to say Roman versus The Rock, they want that based on, you know,
I
just
mean,
the name value. But now it's like that Roman's on top of his game. The Rock coming back, having a fight with would be insane.
yeah. Cena will bust most people on a mic because he's a very good talker. You know, I mean, he would probably even slate me on a mic, and as anybody that does our sort of watch-alongs knows I am the king of the pipe bomb when it comes to these things. Once I get on my high horse, as you'll have heard in the Christmas episode of this podcast,
Yep.
I am very difficult to argue with. But but yeah, there's just something that's clicked in that guy, and um, I'm just loving Roman Reigns as a champion, and although I accept that at some point he's going to have to drop the belt, I know who I'd like him to drop it to. It's also that thing that you get with a really good heel champ, where it's like, he's got to drop it, but you don't really want him to because
Yeah.
you just love what the guy's doing
I
at the
mean,
same time.
it can also work for the benefit. If there's a really good heel champion, that means the babyface that is going up against that heel champion could even be a better babyface. So like
Yeah.
right now, I think we're in agreement. As we'll leave who we thinks is going to do stuff in the next podcast. But I think wrestling. I think especially when we were in August. I think in August it was in a different time because they were. I think maybe they had only just. I don't think they'd moved to the Thunderdome when we recorded it just yet. I think
No,
they're on the verge.
they hadn't quite at that point. I think they were looking to, but they hadn't quite done so at that point.
And
So they was, as you say, they were on the verge of it. And we had Strowman as a champ on SmackDown, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And Drew was doing his thing and being great on Raw, but it was just like something needed to be shaken up.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm
and I
fully
mean,
with
I've got to
you.
say, I'm also loving. Speaking of Raw, I'm also loving the Randy Orton and the Fiend stuff.
Yeah.
And the more of that we get to see, the better, because you've
Yeah.
got two guys that are just master psychologists there.
Yeah, exactly. And also,
Randy Orton, you can say what you like about him as an individual. We've all heard the stories that he has a tendency to be a bit of a dick from time to time, but you can't fault the guy's work as a sort of psychologist and as a heel performer. He's been doing that for 15 years now, and just been
yeah,
kicking people in the head for 15 years.
exactly. I think as well with the Randy Orton Fiend thing, I think it kind of helps because obviously they sort of had their rivalry back in late 2016 or 2017 as well. I don't know whether you're watching back then as much,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
when SmackDown was also really good, when the first the first era of the new brand split came in, Dean Ambrose was champ and he was actually really good, and you had like Daniel Bryan as GM who was also really good. Shane McMahon was fun at the time before he became really annoying. Um, it was all going really well, and at the forefront, Bray Wyatt was champion, and then it turned into weird projected cockroaches at WrestleMania, and it was like, oh,
yeah. And I mean, Randy essentially killed that initial Bray Wyatt gimmick. That kind of Sister Abigail gimmick. Randy was the one that essentially killed that, and in storyline terms.
yep,
And then he obviously went away and repackaged as a Fiend.
yep,
But it really,
yep.
yeah, it's working really well, and I think they might, and I really hope they do carry it out until Mania.
I think they have to, right? I mean, I don't know whether we'll see the Fiend again for a little bit. I haven't watched Raw this week, so I know that there was like a weird Alexa Bliss flame thing, but as far I don't know whether
Yeah,
the Fiend.
okay, so you're aware of that. Okay, yeah, yeah. I wasn't going to spoil it, but I was like, I think we'll see him relatively soon. Um, I think we'll likely see him. Actually, we'll talk about where I think we'll see him next week.
I also, while we were talking about, while
A
we just while we were
bit of a
talking,
hint as to where I think we'll see him actually, but
it could happen. Who knows? But yeah, just while we're talking about the Wyatts, I do want to say, just shocking to hear the passing of John Huber, or Brody Lee, or Luke Harper, a man who was just kind of finding his foot in AEW, and we've heard. I don't know whether you've heard the stories as much, John. I don't know how much, but just a loving father, a loving bloke, a guy that seemed like just a decent human being as well. You
I
you know.
actually they actually, am I right in thinking that they actually gave his son the TNT Championship belt and
Hmm.
basically said,
Yep. Yep.
"This is yours for life"? Um, yeah, it's shocking. I mean, obviously, he, as Luke Harper, he wanted out of WWE for some time, really struggled to get a release from his contracts, and as you say, it looked like he had finally found his feet and found a place where he could really be appreciated and show what he could do. Because unfortunately, WWE, the size of WWE means that it can be very easy for very good performers to get lost. Um, and even some of their top guys now have been in that position where they've got lost, they've been released. Drew was released, D. Bryan was released back in the past. That it's not necessarily a matter of doing anything right or doing anything wrong, or even just anything creatively being right or wrong. Sometimes it can just be that the zeitgeist doesn't capture what that character is doing at the time. And somebody doesn't see it. Um, so it was great to actually see the guy find his place and really look like he was going places. And obviously, it's devastating. Um, is what's happened. He's 2 years younger than me. You know, um, and yeah, wrestling is a cursed business, and we see a lot of instances of people taken before their time. But I think that this is one that is a bit like an Owen Hart or an Eddie Guerrero, where actually we're sitting there and we're like, wow, that is a real gut punch. You know, there's, obviously your thoughts go out to his
Mm.
wife and his children. It's
Yeah, and that's like you were saying. I think it is very similar to those instances of people we've lost before, because just the influx of tweets, videos, even people, even WWE releasing a video, which normally they don't do. Normally they do the whole rest in peace, but they actually released a video of superstars talking about the man himself because he was such a nice bloke. You saw, I think it may have been Woods on Talking Smack, which I don't watch, but I watched this clip of Woods talk and Kofi talking on Talking Smack about him, and you just think of so many moments that he could have had. You think of those, obviously the good moments that he had a few, and I will ask you what your favorite Luke Harper slash Brody Lee moment is in a second. But just a massive blow to I think to not only the wrestling landscape but also just the world.
it is rare in wrestling to find somebody where that is almost universally liked. Because it is a business that can be a bit cutthroat. It is a business that can attract personalities that can be a bit dickish, and most wrestlers there's going to be a fair portion of people that have got a bad word to say about them. So it's rare to actually come across somebody that has that universal love. The only examples I can think of really are Owen Hart, who, if you read, say, Foley's first book, Have a Nice Day, it comes across very well just how universally loved Owen was.
Yep.
And thankfully he's still with us. Mark Henry is another guy who actually nobody has got a bad word to say about, because
Yep.
he's a guy that worked hard, realized that he had limitations, worked on them, improved, and has never been a dick to anyone.
Oh, and
Uh,
you've had the privilege to meet Mark, am I right? I think. Have
I
you?
have, yeah, yeah. There's a wonderful photo from LFCC, oh, nearly 3 years ago now, of me and my sister meeting Mark Henry, and like literally we're both sort of like half asleep, leaning on his chest like that. Because obviously he's a big guy, so he's got his arms around both of us, and we're both like, yes, Mark Henry. Yeah, lovely, lovely guy, an absolute top bloke.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I press you for your favorite Brody Lee slash Luke Harper moment, if you remember anything that you
I
really
think I've got
enjoyed?
to I think I've got to go back to the Wyatt family. and in particular the tag team with Eric Rowan. Because they were just like two. There was a period around sort of 2016 when they were just kicking ass week in week out.
Because didn't they become the Bludgeoning Brothers at some point as well?
They,
And then
that's exactly it. Yeah, I think shortly after the might have been shortly after Randy defeated Bray and the Wyatt family kind of broke up. They kept on as they stayed on as the Bludgeon Brothers for a while after that. And yeah, they were just working so well. Don't get me wrong, John Huber was a wonderful singles wrestler, a great solo wrestler, but just the chemistry of that tag team and how the two of them worked together was brilliant. Because I mean, most successful tag teams that have got a big man in, it's normally a big man, little man kind of thing. It's rare to have two big guys that work that well together as a tag team. And they really did. The only other one I can really think of was the Brothers of Destruction, and obviously they were essentially two singles wrestlers that tagged together in terms of the Undertaker and Glenn Jacobs. But to actually have a proper tag team with two bigger guys was fantastic for me.
yeah,
What would you say yours was?
I have two. It's kind of difficult. They're both from 2014. One was the Wyatts versus the Shield is a massive memory for me because obviously at that time I had only got into WWE prior, and I was a massive CM Punk fan because obviously I joined in 2011. Punk was on fire. Then Punk leaves, and I'm like, oh, I don't really like John Cena because I was in that awkward teenage phase. I found John Cena a bit annoying. Obviously, Daniel Bryan was on the rise, but at that point he'd sort of cooled off a bit. He wasn't at the WrestleMania level again yet.
Yeah,
He was building again, but he wasn't there. And I was like, I love the Shield. I think they're badass. I think they're cool. And I love the Wyatts as well. So that match, all in all, was great. I thought it was amazing. Especially after that pay-per-view like Elimination Chamber as well. It sort of made that match bigger because I think if it happened on Mania 30 with the Daniel Bryan stuff happened, I think it would have been undercooked because obviously the memory would have been the Daniel Bryan stuff. But I think leaving Chamber that year, you were thinking about holy shit, how cool was the Wyatt versus the Shield match? But also, this is my biggest underrated Luke Harper moment. Is actually a match with Dolph Ziggler at TLC. I think in 2014 for the Intercontinental Championship. That is a great one-on-one match. Probably Luke's best match. I think. Just stellar. I think the stuff that he and Ziggler did in the back half of 2014 when Luke first went out on his own, I think is stellar. I think he was a good Intercontinental Champion, if not underserved. But yeah, I thought that
Dolph,
match was
Dolph,
great.
Dolph doesn't do bad matches.
Nope.
And as one of the, I really love Dolph. Dolph just doesn't do bad matches. He always knows how to get the best out of himself and get the best out of the other guy. He's one of these. You can always tell a good wrestler because they make both themselves and their opponent look good. They're not scared to make their opponent look good. And Dolph's one of those guys that is really excellent at that. So when you've got somebody that is both physically gifted and as naturally talented as John Huber was, it's just playing completely to Dolph because he hasn't got to do very much at all to make him look fantastic because he just is.
Yeah. I mean, again, go back to, for example, possibly one of the best cash-ins of all time, if not the best cash-in, 2013, Dolph Ziggler on Alberto Del Rio, who at the time was the babyface, but nobody likes Alberto Del Rio. Nobody likes the person he actually is in real life. Anyway, but nobody liked Alberto Del Rio as the face. Everyone was behind Ziggler, and that New York crowd was electric. Like as a kid as well, I remember that moment live and thinking, this guy's like a real life superhero. He's just coming and the crowd are off their feet. You got AJ at the time, who was one of the most entertaining people. You got Big E there as well. It was amazing. I like Dolph Ziggler's great, but back to John, just an absolute legend that will be missed. Like I
Yeah,
said, not only for the things he did in the wrestling world, but just for being a decent human being. So, as you said, thoughts go out to the family, friends, everyone that has ever watched a Luke Harper, or Brady Lee match or whoever worked with him. Just what a legend.
yeah,
And I do hope, I know he didn't do too much in the grand scape of WWE, but I hope there's a Hall of Fame induction on the way at some point.
I think that we might see at some point a collective Wyatt family induction. Yeah, I think a solo induction might be a little bit further down the line, but I think that we'd certainly see an induction as part of the Wyatt family um, at some point relatively soon, hopefully. Who knows, maybe even this year. You know, they normally try to put a stable or two in each year, don't they?
Yeah.
So, yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for him. And I will just ask you before we get into our main review, anything you've been watching this week that isn't wrestling based or anything like that?
Anything I've been watching this week that is not wrestling based? What I've been doing? I tell you what, I'm again. This is something else that I'm very good at being late to the game on things. I know last time you had me on, we were talking about Friday Night Dinner and how I like binged all 6 seasons of that up about 9 years too late. You know, so again a little bit late to the game on this, but I've just started watching. I've just started watching Cobra Kai on Netflix.
That's something I need to get into. It's something I need to get
Which
into that
I, without spoiling it, I absolutely love it. It is very clever how they've taken the two kind of central Karate Kid characters of Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso. I nearly called him Daniel's son because I couldn't remember his surname for a second there. And Daniel LaRusso, and essentially kept them as the same characters, but reversed the roles a little bit so that actually Johnny's a bit more of a good guy and Daniel's a bit more of a dick. It's really worth watching, and it's nice sort of half-hour long sort of bite-sized episodes, and there's a really nice sort of sense of humor to it as well. You know, so it's well worth a watch, mate.
awesome. Actually, I'm sorry to go back to wrestling, but I did also listen slash watch the Broken Skull sessions with Bailey that was released, which is honestly, John, I recommend it because I think everyone appreciates Bailey, especially in this heel run that she's got. She's been incredible, and I think the good thing I like about these Broken Skull sessions is that it peels back the curtain a little bit because it's not something kids. I don't think the younger viewers would listen to anyway. So therefore, I think it's sometimes I don't mind that being on the network. I think it's nice to have an insight. And like you get moments where Bailey talks about the main event at Mania and she looks at the photo and you can see in her eyes she wanted to be in that spot in that match and stuff like that. She talks about how she felt out of place in the Four Horsewomen. She felt like the odd one out. And it's a really interesting listen.
I mean, I'll have to give that a listen. I mean, Bailey is very underrated. And you know, I think you just hit the nail on the head right there in terms of like, you know, she felt out of place in the Four Horsewomen, but she absolutely deserves to have that place, and she's shown that over the last year. I mean, that you know, the run that she had as champ. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am, as you know, I am absolutely team Sasha Banks, but the run that she had as champ was phenomenal. And you know, you don't hold the belt for a year as a heel unless you are special and you are doing something absolutely right. You know, there are not many people that get to hold a belt for that long.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah, no, I think it's insane. So I think you just need to give it a listen. But John, I also asked you this question. What because it only came out and I asked the same question the other week. What did you think of the revolution of the Daleks, mate?
hmm, okay.
We've talked about it on here, so you can kind of say what you like.
A little bit
Um,
too much revolution, not quite enough Daleks for me. Um, it was 15 minutes longer than Resolution was, and I think they wasted those 15 minutes. You know, you had like 40 minutes of build up, and or maybe 45 minutes of build up, half an hour of Daleks. I'd much rather have just had that Dalek bit brought back a little bit earlier and sort of concentrated a bit, made them a bit more of a threat before they did the big let's go and blow them all up sort of thing. But it was yeah, it was good. It was good. You know, it was enjoyable. I very rarely find an episode of Doctor Who that I don't like. As you know, I was a big fan of Series 12, and this seems to have followed in the same vein. Personally, I think it's really hard not to compare the two, and I think I probably did slightly prefer Resolution to Revolution in the Daleks. I like certain elements of it. I liked what they did with Yaz and the fact that they effectively made her a bit kind of OCD in terms of living in the TARDIS and just covering it in post-it notes everywhere, and almost obsessing about when the Doctor was coming back. I liked that thing of the companions' anger when she came back after 10 months, because I think that's a very human reaction.
Yeah.
I liked the scene. I know, I'm sure a lot of people have already spoken about it. I liked the scene between the Doctor and Ryan, although it did kind of leave me thinking, why weren't we having scenes like this with Ryan from series 11 onwards? It would have really helped to flesh out his character a bit more. It felt a little bit like shutting the stable door after the horse had bolted. Um, and I liked quite a bit of it. I was worried before watching it that it would effectively be the Captain Jack show, and we would have like an hour of the Doctor in prison. So I was very pleased that it didn't turn into that, and actually we had a proper story with the Doctor. I'd probably rank it around 6 or 7 out of 10. It's not it wasn't a resolution for me, but it certainly wasn't an Orphan 55 either.
Speaking of which, this Friday, listen to the Orphan 55 watch along with John Cook in it as well.
Yeah, not wanting to spoil my views, but when we're asked for our views at the end, I am spectacular in how I express myself, if I do say so myself.
Very well done.
Yeah, I've not heard it yet, but I do recall being on one, so to speak. And I mean, I guess the other thing that we kind of need to touch on leaked into Revolution was the little announcement that we had afterwards.
Yeah, Mr. John Bishop. Me and Aaron spoke about this. We essentially, I don't know whether you listened to the episode, John, but we essentially said that there's not much you can really comment on yet because we don't know anything about Bishop in the role. But the track record of comedians coming into Doctor Who, especially the modern era of coming into Doctor Who's companions, who maybe don't have the most vigorous acting background and stealing the show and being some of the best characters of the bunch. You think of Catherine Tate is like the gold standard of that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Catherine Tate, you look at Matt Lucas. You even look actually, to Bradley Walsh, although he's known more for being a presenter, if you like. He's always had a sort of like entertainment comedy background. He was I can't remember if he was a red coat or a blue coat, but he worked at one of the holiday camps before making it into television. So he's always there's always been a really good track record of comedians in Doctor Who. If we ignore Hale and Pace and Survival. I think a part of that is because comedians are kind of always performing. They're always acting to a degree.
Yeah.
They've got to pretty much always be on. Personally, I'd have liked to see a few episodes with just the Doctor and Yaz.
I do think we're getting that though.
We might still get that.
I still think we're going to get a bit of that.
We might still get that. But I think what I'd also want to say is I've seen some criticism of the announcement with sort of people saying, "Oh, it's another white man, and he's going to be taking it's a white middle-aged man, and he's going to be taking screen time away from women and from a young Asian woman." And what I would say in relation to that is we don't know anything about the character that John Bishop will be playing. All that we know is that his name is Dan. He could be gay, he could be bi, he could be disabled. He could have any number of equalities elements going on in his life.
Yeah, exactly.
So just because he's a white middle-aged man does not mean that there's not going to be some representation in that character. And I think it's a little. I'm trying to pick my word
Yeah,
very.
yeah. You have to kind of dance
I'm
around
going
it.
to pick my word very diplomatically.
Yep,
I think it's a little bit narrow-minded
I would agree.
to immediately criticise it
I would agree.
for not being diverse
Yeah,
when we don't actually know the role that he's going to be playing.
yeah, exactly. And for me as well, just to add to that, is I don't think there would be anything wrong if John Bishop was to come in and play just a regular white straight male at this point, because I know obviously in the past Doctor Who we've had a lot of that. You know, we had the Doctor who's always white. They're never straight because the Doctor can't be straight because he's not human, and therefore we don't know how those things work. But and we know the Doctor has had weird. We've heard references to him doing stuff with men in the past as well, even when he was a male Doctor. So, but for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with it just being a regular white dude for once.
No,
And
no, of course not. But I mean, but the thing is, it wouldn't be for once because I mean, it is. I mean, essentially, it's coming straight after Graham.
no, but Graham had cancer. Graham had cancer, and that whole thing, he had his own limitations to his character, which yes weren't brought up all the time. But then again, though, if they were, people would complain that you're relying on that and using it too much. So for me, I don't think there's anything wrong for this Dan character to just be a regular white dude. I'm not saying that means there shouldn't be representation. I'm not saying there's too much either. I'm just saying that to immediately go the character there shouldn't be white regular men in Doctor Who. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, John. But I'm saying if that's what people want now, people have to be diverse. That sort of defeats the point because regular white men still exist, and therefore, if you're not going to represent them as well, the problem still exists. I get throughout history there have been a lot more representation for regular white dudes, and I'm not saying that, but I don't think the fix of that is to flip it completely and then have no representation for regular white dudes. I think it should be equal across the board for me.
No, you're absolutely spot on.
So I mean, look, if Dan, I'm all for Dan having some kind of sexuality or something like that. But I'm just saying that for me, I don't think it's a problem if he is just a white man. Also, the whole argument of taking away the screen time from the ladies is rubbish because Jodie Whittaker is the star of the show. She will always be the star of the show when she's the Doctor. Hopefully, with one less companion, Yaz gets more to do. But that's down to Chibnall's writing.
It is.
But on to the review of the. Hang on, after that, I need to take a drink. See, this is normally what you wouldn't see. This is normally fine, but now I feel kind of self-conscious for taking a drink on screen. But now on to the review. I haven't reviewed one of these in a while. Last time I did it was with Adam and Moon, and we essentially took the mick out of it the whole time because we were like, none of us had watched the film before we started the podcast because it was sort of an impromptu thing. So we just started talking about Christmas adverts and Christmas films. But this time we will actually be reviewing the 2014 Marvel film, Guardians of the Galaxy.
So which film was it that you
This
kind of.
was Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier.
My favourite of the Captain America films, and you didn't do it full service.
I'm sorry, man.
I mean, I would say if you're going to bluff your way through one, bluff your way through a good one because there's still going to be enough to talk about.
Exactly.
You know, you could not bluff your way through Thor: The Dark World or Iron Man 2.
No, not at all. Not at all. Those you can't really spice those up enough to bluff through them. You got to sort of
No.
dissect them. But actually, it was something that was strange. Owen really enjoyed Thor: The Dark World because he watched it for the first time the other day, and I was massively surprised. Like he loved it. I mean, all power to him. I'm not gonna. But
There's something for everyone. You
I
know, there's
was.
something for everyone.
But I
There's
know how Owen gets with things, and so do you. So I was very surprised. He was like, "What you thought?" I said, "Make sure you have a drink at hand," and he said, "No, I actually really enjoyed it."
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's something out there for everyone, and you know, that's the wonder of that's the wonder of something like Doctor Who or something like the MCU, that actually even a film that is universally in people's bottom threes, there's gonna be somebody that goes, actually, I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
people take what they want from it. You know,
And this week we're sort of reviewing the opposite because this week we're reviewing the universally loved Guardians of the Galaxy from 2014, and I think I've watched this film twice. I have quite an affinity for this film because not only is it great, but also this is the first MCU film I ever watched. And I'll tell you why. It links back to wrestling. I was like, Dave Bautista's in the film. Yeah, I'm gonna go watch that. I had no idea what the MCU was at that point because when this came out, I would have been 13, I think. So I had no idea about the prior movies. I was a bit too young to kind of grasp them. But this is sort of where I started, and do you know what? I don't remember. I didn't remember half the stuff in this film, but I thought from beginning to end, it's a lot of fun. It's brilliant. It has heart, as emotion, it has everything a film should have, and it's almost perfect. Keyword on almost.
so you're trying to tell me that you initially went to see this film for Dave Bautista,
Yep.
not for Karen Gillan.
Not that I wasn't a Doctor Who fan at the time. When
Okay.
well, I was slightly, but not
Wow.
not 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 when. So when this came out it was 2014, right? And I started in 2013, so I was yet to go back, and also
Okay.
I was also yet to
You were
develop romance. You know, my kind of joke with Karen, me loving Karen Gillan as a wonderful person that she is. I sort of was a bit too young to develop those
um,
feelings
I,
as well.
I, I kind of wondered where you were going with that for a second there.
But
I was like, okay.
Yeah, but so yeah, I was a bit too young to appreciate that. But no, I went for Dave Batista, stayed for Gillen. There you go.
Yeah.
To be honest, I probably didn't know she was in the movie before I went to. She wasn't in the marketing very much. I don't think. I don't.
Um, yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, you might not remember it, but it was a huge, at the time in 2013, as I would say, a year before the film, it was quite a huge thing because she turned up to San Diego Comic Con with her hair practically shaved to be playing Nebula. And obviously, she was known for these flowing red locks in Doctor Who. And these pictures kind of came up on Twitter, and I remember at the time my initial reaction being just, "Why, Karen? Why?" Um, you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the casting was quite. It made a little bit of a stir on social media at the time because obviously she was very well known for the hair and of that going for the role, but but yeah, it was yeah, I can understand how she wouldn't necessarily be recognizable um if you'd kind of been a casual Who viewer as Nebula.
You know, yeah, it's yeah, exactly. And at that point, yeah, like I hadn't gone back yet to watch it. But I went for Dave Bautista now because I remember as part again, sorry to bring it back to wrestling, but I remember as part of the storyline back in 2014 when he left, the whole joke was Triple H going, if you leave, you're going to go do these films, they're all going to flop. Go do your little space crap film. I think that's what they used against him at the time. They're like, this film will flop. And actually, Batista made Triple H like a right mug because it became one of the biggest films of the year, and if not, the decade itself. So
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, this is like just after they had him come in and win the Royal Rumble, and he was gonna challenge at Mania, and you know, do all of these wonderful things. And that was all linked into the build up and promotion for this film. I remember how angry that made me.
yeah, it's so. But I mean, just to give a little bit of so this film is directed by the brilliant James Gunn, who has since this film gone on to do well. Before this film, he was essentially known for Slither and some like lower horror films, and also he directed or written he written the Scooby Doo films as well. Those live action Scooby Doo films, which I love, but I'm the generation for those films coming out, and
I love the first one, but that's because it's got Isla Fisher in it.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan. Whereas I'm a massive fan of the second one. I don't know why, I just am. But so after this as well, he's gone on obviously to do Guardians 2, but not only that, now he's also doing the Suicide Squad, which looks batshit, and I'm incredibly excited to see where that will go. But and also I think he's got a John Cena TV series coming out with is it Peacemaker? I think John Cena is having a series with that superhero that with James Gunn on board to direct the whole thing. I think it's going to be a HBO Max series with James Gunn and John Cena. Which
Wow.
did you not
I,
know
I,
this?
I was not aware of this.
I'm gonna quickly Google this to make sure that I'm not.
So you're saying it's HBO Max, so it will be available in the UK, but what Mr. Cena is essentially saying to his right, it'll be available in the US, but what Mr. Cena is essentially saying to his UK viewers that it's on HBO Max is that they can't see him.
Yep. So yeah, yep. That's it. That's it. Yep. Well done. Well done there. That was
Um,
good.
just for our audience, Sparky,
Surely we've
so
got to
if
get HBO Max
if
soon.
you hear dreaming noises in the background, that will be Sparky sleeping.
Surely we've got to have HBO Max in the UK eventually, right?
They've got to do something, but I mean, I'll be honest. I think they've got to do something anyway around cinema and streaming and find a new way of working. Um,
Yeah.
I've actually, just before coming on here tonight, I've actually downloaded a rental copy of Wonder Woman 1984 off of my Skybox. Other
Nice.
other systems are available.
Like the Amazons. I think you can rent it off
Yeah,
Amazon if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. So I've sort of rented myself a copy off of there, and you know that with the way that things are, if the film industry is going to survive, it's going to have to adapt,
Yep.
and finding ways to stream as well as using cinemas is probably the way to do that. Personally, I don't understand why, say, a company like View or one of the large multiplex companies can't actually set something up through their own website and actually just have their own cinema streaming service. You know, that's a great way to actually keep people employed and get revenue going back into cinemas,
Yep.
um, and production companies.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So yeah, no, the Peacemaker series will be coming out in 2022 with John
Uh,
Cena set to star, which is awesome. But what would you say, John, just for the viewers who haven't seen this, which would be weird, what would you say is the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy?
okay, I would say that the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy is essentially that we get 5 misfits, which is something that I'll come on to a little bit later. So we get 5 sort of misfits that essentially find each other. They find a common bond and form a common purpose, in order to take on tyranny and, well, essentially save a world. And each one's got their own little backstory. So, you know, you've got Peter Quill as Star Lord, who is essentially an orphan. His mother has died. His father is a mysterious figure, so he doesn't know who his father is, and he's been essentially raised by Yondu, this kind of space mercenary. Um, then you've got Gamora, who again is adopted, has a very interesting family background. You've got Drax the Destroyer, who's seeking to avenge the death of his wife and child. Again, lost his family. And you've got Rocket and Groot, who are almost like 2 brothers that have found each other. So it's like 5 characters in search of a family that find that family bond in each other and then use that together to stop Ronan, who is just an absolute badass bastard, and has one of the Infinity Stones. Remember that they might come up later at some point in future editions of this podcast.
Who
Who
knows?
knows?
Who
Who
knows?
knows?
Who knows?
The Infinity Stones could be significant. You never know. Indeed, the first time I watched it, I was like, could be significant. You never know. Um, and he'd also been, so yeah, he was working to find the stone for Thanos. Remember that as well. Could be significant. Might come up later. Um, and he wants to just destroy the planet of his mortal enemies using this stone. There are lots of wonderful chases, there are lots of wonderful battles and fights, but actually, at the center of it is a lot of heart, a lot of soul. You know, you genuinely like and want these characters to succeed and bond together, and a kick ass soundtrack.
Yeah, I think it's Tyler Bates who was the composer as well. Because not only is the also makes a great soundtrack, but also you have the bombast of the the actual the instrumentals and things like that. Which
The score itself is wonderful as well.
yeah,
You know, the score itself is wonderful. But yeah, you know, there's 3 or 4 songs off of that soundtrack in terms of the popular music that they choose that actually you can't help but hear, and you just think of that film. And it is like right, you know, from the start right through to the sort of mid-credit scene, the use of music is just
yeah, it's great. Like you were saying though, I think the best thing about this film is the heart of the film. I think as well because none of these characters are particularly good people at all, especially at the start of the movie. They're all a bit of an asshole. Like none of them, they're all like you shouldn't want to root for. It's not like an Iron Man sense where like because Tony could be a bit of a sarcastic prat, but these people are genuinely not very good people. Like you get introduced to Peter Quill, and you think he's funny because he has this amazing dance sequence to "Come and Get Your Love," and it's like amazing. Like, one of the songs every time that comes on the eBay adverts, I just think of Going to the Galaxy. Um, but not only that, after he does this whole little fight sequence, he goes back on his ship, and there's just this one night stand from the night before, and he just doesn't remember that she's there at all. Like
yeah.
it's such,
And
it's
like
such
that, but that's I mean but that's the thing with all of them, you know, that for me, with the slight exception of Rocket and Groot, for me, that what connects them is that at the start of the film, they're all damaged, they're all kind of loners, and it can come across as selfish. Um, but it's because they're damaged, it's because they've lost people, or they've just not had that understanding of what it is to be part of a group, to be part of a family, and you know they find it throughout the film. So I think certainly at at the start, what we see in Star Lord, Gamora, and Drax, and in Rocket and Groot as a unit together, is just that we can't trust anybody else. We're not going to rely on anybody else, and we're going to look out for number one, or in Rocket and Groot's case, number 1 and 2.
yeah. Like you said, I think there's such that moment. I think another good thing about this film as well is how the characters are introduced. 'Cause it's not like you go from one to the other to the other to the other like you would with some team up films. Sort of like what they did with the Avengers, which is why kind of like the first half an hour of the Avengers or so isn't the most entertaining to me. But with this film, they link all of the meeting. So like Drax doesn't show up for the first like half an hour because he's not necessary until that point. They don't bother to give him they allow him to explain his backstory rather than
Yeah,
them show, which sometimes showing rather than telling is better. But I think in this case it would have slowed the film right down if we had 10 minutes dedicated to Drax by himself. So I think
absolutely,
so I think,
absolutely.
yeah. So I think it's really, really good. I think especially the film being through the eyes of Peter Quill, especially the first act, especially is really cool because you explore this world. Like you said, not only is this the first time you see the Infinity Stones, this is also the first time you've gone into space really within the MCU and you've explored this area. And they do it such a brilliant job. I mean, you have amazing characters along the way. You have Yondu, who is one of the best characters in
Oh,
in the
we're gonna
MC.
we're gonna come on to Yondu.
Um, Michael Rooker's doing brilliant. You have John C. Reilly and Glenn Close, who are like are part of the Nova Corps on Xandar, who are unfortunately in this movie and won't come back because Xandar was completely obliterated in a later film. But they're great here. Digimon Honsu as Korath, who it doesn't get enough to do, but Digimon does get to come back in Captain Marvel later on and get
So
somewhat
that,
of
that is actually pronounced Digimon.
that. I believe so. I believe it's
What?
Digimon Honsu. I know.
That is, I sort of looked at it the other day and I wondered, and that is brilliant. Because sometimes you see a name and you're like, how is that pronounced? Please let it be pronounced that way. So it's brilliant. There was a guy on the darts the other week, and his name was Dirk von, and it was like Djuvenbode, and he was Dutch, and I was like, please let that be pronounced diving board. And it wasn't. It was Djuvenbode.
Oh
But
no.
but yeah, it's brilliant when you see a name and it's like, I want it to be pronounced like that, and it is. It's great.
Yeah, also obviously Karen Gillan's here doing a great job. She doesn't get very much in this film. Obviously, the Nebula character gets developed much more in Guardians 2 and then into Infinity War and Endgame. In here, she's
Yeah.
sort of just background fodder for Nebula, for Gamora to sort of have someone to fight with in the final act and have a little
Mm.
bit. But you really get into that later on. And obviously, Lee Pace is Ronan the Accuser, who is possibly one of the most underrated villains in MCU history.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, it's absolute beast. Right.
Yeah, and also you get the first appearance, or technically first appearance of Josh Brolin as Thanos in in this film as well, which is really good. So yeah, this is about world building, but it's not the film isn't a well, I say it's all about world building. At the same time, that doesn't take away from the story that they are trying to tell, which is this isolated story with these characters, and it doesn't the world building doesn't just like take time away from the story. It aids the story they're trying to tell, and I think it's brilliant, for sure.
And this is the thing. This is a really interesting. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was rewatching it. For me, Guardians was the one part of the MCU about which I knew nothing before seeing the film. So when they did Captain America, they started off with an origins film. When they did Thor, when they did Iron Man, Hulk, they gave them origins films, and I was like, I didn't really need to know the origins of those characters because I kind of already knew them. Here was something where they kind of could have justified doing an origins film, and actually, it's completely not necessarily because they do it in this film. Quill's origins film is pretty much the first scene of this film. It establishes everything that we need to know about Quill, and then we find out over the sort of next 5 minutes what's happened to him since that point. But in 5 minutes, you know this character. That's his origin film right there, and it's exactly the same for Gamora and for Drax when he appears. You just kind of you get it the minute these characters arrive. The story is so tightly told. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think as well is that like you said, they sort of skip the backstories to just give the backstory of how the group came together rather than how
Yeah,
these people got to here, that sort of stuff. Because it didn't really, like you said, it's not really necessary. You don't need that because they're not going to go off and do their own adventures. They're a unit, and that's how they work. You can allow the characters to explore their backstories with each other. You don't need
yeah.
to see, and I think Drax is the perfect example of that. Especially in this film. Drax, this is my favorite appearance of Drax because I do believe in the later films they sort of do make him too much of a joke. Because in this film he's funny, but he's not like, oh, I have to laugh at everything. I'm really stupid. In this film he's just quite stern and quite dumb, which works a lot better than him just being a complete. Obviously, I do enjoy Dave Bautista and Drax in later films, but I think in this film they don't overuse his silliness. I think they get the perfect mix of him being a bit silly. He doesn't really get everything, but also he's a badass that can do whatever he needs to.
What if I rip out somebody's spine for saying something mean?
Is
That's
that
essentially murder. One of the worst crimes you can commit.
um but also as well, this is actually a negative on this film. I think this is Bradley Cooper's worst job as Rocket. And on the rewatch, also just because it's my only negative about the film, like legitimately, is that there were some lines where obviously because he wasn't with the people in the on set,
Mm.
sometimes Rocket's delivery isn't as good as it could be in terms of it doesn't really fit what they're
Yeah,
saying.
I get that, and I think to a degree, when you watch this one back now, Rocket doesn't come across quite as well because he's not bouncing off of Thor. And I think once you've kind of seen um, Infinity War and you see that chemistry between Rocket and Thor, it's a bit like, wow, I just want that. And so, yeah, Rocket doesn't work quite so well in this one, but for me, because retrospectively, I'm like, I've seen what he can do when he's bouncing off a Hemsworth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Groot is really good in this film. This is like Groot. This version of Groot's only appearance within the MCU because obviously when Groot gets rebuilt, it's a different character, which is why teenage Groot's a bit different, a bit more violent, less caring than perhaps the Groot we had before. There is a beautiful scene which sort of comes out of nowhere, but I really like it when he gives that girl the flower because it's just a beautiful moment. Really shows Groot's intentions. Um, I think obviously you can't really quite comment too much on Vin Diesel's performance because he only got to say one line, but I suppose the one line's very
Yeah,
good.
he says it very well, and in a number of different ways that can be interpreted and translated by his co-stars.
Exactly.
It is. I mean, it's brilliant that it's Vin Diesel doing that.
Yeah, you can't really. I mean, yeah, you just can't really beat it, can you? I mean, you couldn't really replace him, to be honest. Um, but yeah, I think as well, this is one of the most beautiful looking MCU films. For me, I think the colors are so vibrant and
I'd, I'd say so. It's our first sort of trip into space. It's one of the first times that we go sort of extensively into other worlds and things like that, and they really use it. They use it really well. Like the different colors everywhere in terms of the locations, the characters, just the use of color is just so cleverly done.
yeah, you can't really knock it at all. But there is, and also there was with it being a character piece, there's still some really good action. It is one of the most best third acts of the MCU for me. I think I love
Yeah.
the third act. I think it's great when they're all discussing what they're gonna do, how they have to kind of team up with the Ravengers who can't be trusted, but they do it anyway. There's many layers to it. It's not only the Ravengers there to help, but they're there to get their own personal gain. Where with the deal where Quill has to give Yondu the Power Stone at the end of it, um, and things like that. So there's a lot of layers to it. There's also some great infighting. The fight between Nebula and Gamora is great as well. You
Yeah.
have the emotional ending with the death of Groot, which is just such a beautiful moment, and they make it beautiful with these fireflies around it as well, and all that kind of stuff. So nice. But and also you have one of the most comedic final battles with the dance off, and then one of the more serious, emotional team group moments where they all come together to hold the Power Stone, and you get one of the best ending lines, which doesn't obviously rival the I Am Iron Man, but the line "You said it yourself, bitch" with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then getting rid of Ronan is one of the best ways to end a fight scene.
Yeah, it is just, yeah, it's like, I'm going to take what you've said and I'm going to use it against you. And it's like, it is a brilliant third act. It's perfection because it's not overdone, which some of the some of the third acts in the MCU can be. They can, the battle scenes can be a bit overlong, and they can be, oh, you think you got me? Well, here's this. You think you got me? Well, here's this, and here's this, and here's this.
I
I
think of
think
Avengers: Age of Ultron as an
that,
example of that for sure.
yeah, but I think the pacing's right, and it just works.
Yeah. Also, as well, those elements I just said of there being like a heartfelt moment and a funny moment and then another heartfelt moment and a light comedy, it shouldn't work. But because of how it's set up, it all feels within the tone of what they've already done. And the actors, Chris Pratt does an amazing job. They're all on stellar top form performances. They all mixes well together and doesn't feel inconsistent. It all feels consistent with what we've seen in the past hour and a half.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It doesn't jar at any point. It all seems to flow really, really nicely.
Exactly. Yeah. To be honest, there's sort of two bits to this film. There's sort of the plot with Ronan the accuser, and then there's also there's the wider setup of the MCU. So you sort of have this one scene which is rather pointless in essence of the film, where Gamora's like, right, we need to go see the collector because he's going to give us some money. Whereas actually it's more of just an info dump about the Infinity Stones, very well hidden within that, but within the sense of the overall film, didn't really need to be there, to be honest with you. But it
Yeah,
works out perfectly fine anyway. You
and it's
also
kind of the same with the stuff with Thanos. He doesn't actually have to be there. The Ronan, you could just be Ronan, but actually, it fits into the wider arc of what's going on very, very nicely, I
yeah.
would say.
Yeah, and obviously we get some amazing emotional moments as well in the middle of the film, where obviously Drax, Rocket, and Groot get a bit drunk and they start having to go at each other. And you find out that Rocket has been cybernetically enhanced raccoon. We suppose, we don't know. He could be another alien that just looks like a raccoon. We find out he didn't want to be made, and obviously you kind of get like hints of this. Obviously, when they first go to the prison, the kiln, I think it is called.
Yeah,
Quill sees Rocket's like cybernetic enhancements on his back and things like that um, as well. So it's all really nice, and you get the moment of Drax like saying he wants to avenge his family, but then in doing so is really stupid and brings Ronan to nowhere. And then that kind of sets up the third act because it's all like, oh no, we've got to get going now. But to me, the best part of this film is the first act. I know I've said that I love the third act, but I think the first act of them all meeting and you kind of get the info dump on them. I think it's all great.
it's wonderfully set up. It's wonderfully set up. The introduction to all of these characters is just brilliant, and not just your five main characters, but the side characters as well. It's just brilliant. I mean, I know we sort of mentioned Yondu earlier, and I absolutely love Yondu. I love Michael Rooker. As a big fan of as a big fan of the Walking Dead. Um, to see sort of Mel Dixon in space, it's just awesome.
Yeah,
you so it's and he's on fire. He's one of these characters where you're not supposed to like him because you know how he's treated Quill, but actually he is still essentially a father figure.
yeah, and
And
you
even when you get to the bit at the end where Quill scums him over, you get that impression that Yondu knows he's being scummed over because when he actually opens the orb on the ship, it's like he knows that's coming.
the good old troll doll and things like that. Um, I think yeah, like, it's really good. I really like their relationship, and the good thing about Yondu is he's amazing in this film, but he only gets better in Volume 2 as well, which is it
Yeah,
just
I mean, without spoiling future podcasts, he made me cry in Volume 2 when I saw it at the cinema.
yeah.
Um,
I doubt, which you wouldn't think if you said to someone at the end of this, if you were like, would the character Yondu ever make you cry? You'd probably go, nah, not really. But you wait to Volume 2 for
I mean,
that.
to be fair, if you said to them one day, "Would he ever make John Cook cry?" They might well say yes, because lots of things do. But
I'm with you on that one, mate. I'm with you on that one. I'm the same on that. So is there anything you want to particularly bring up about the film? Anything that really stood out to you that I maybe haven't spoken about just yet, or something I'm forgetting?
I mean, it's really hard to pick out individual things because the whole thing's just brilliant.
Yeah,
The cast from top to bottom are just absolutely do a job. Even in the side roles, you've got people like Glenn Close and Benicio del Toro in quite minor roles, and it's like, well, that's how good this is. Um, that kind of sense of family, as I say, the use of music, in particular the mid-credit scene with the newly found baby Groot dancing away, and then Drax turning around and him stopping, and then it starting again. It's just fantastic. You know, it's just it's a superb film, and you know, there's a reason that I wanted to sort of come on and talk Guardians when we got around to Guardians, and it is because it is probably my favourite part of the MCU, because it's just feel good.
Yep.
And sometimes that's what you need. Um, you know, you don't have to kind of think too much about what's going on. It's just a big emotional ride, and you come out of it feeling great.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'm with you. I think, like you said, it's difficult to pick like individual things. It's not like the other Marvel movies either. It doesn't really follow the set Marvel formula. That obviously doing these reviews, you kind of figure out. I mean, I took a break from the MCU for a while. Last time we properly reviewed one was Thor: The Dark World, and that was before I even moved out to Cardiff, which was in August.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I love this film. I think it's great. I think the cast is great. There isn't much to say because when a film is this good, all you gotta do, it's not like a debate, like, when something's a bit mediocre or in the middle or something's horrible. Like when a
Mm.
film's just good, it's just good. You can't really explain why it's good. You can,
Yeah,
in a way, you can sort of explain why something's bad because you can go, oh well, if this was done better, but you can't go, oh yeah, this would be bad if it was done worse. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's really hard. I mean, it's just that everything about it works, and I guess you've got to kind of, I guess you've got to kind of put that down to the direction, really. You
James
know,
Gunn
when
is a genius.
you know, you see so many films where actually all of those elements work, but they don't gel. So when you've got something that is actually that good, and it's like, I can't actually think of anything negative to say about it. That's down to James Gunn.
I would, uh, I would be inclined to agree with you on that. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely,
it, it,
absolutely.
it it's superb stuff.
Superb.
You know, and actually, it's really kind of the bond, the bond between the actors and the director is really tight as well, because obviously when James left the series, there was quite a sort of there was quite a kickback from a lot of the actors involved. To my detriment, actually, I was due to meet Mr. Batista at MCM in 2019, and I think he cancelled because of everything that was going on. Oh no, it must have been 2018. Sorry, I forgot we pretty much missed a year last year. Yeah, in 2018, but he cancelled with sort of everything that was going on with James Gunn in the MCU at the time.
And I think that was rightfully so, because I think if he went, he would just got questioned all the time about what's happening with
Yeah,
James,
exactly.
why.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
You know, it's a shame, but you know, it would have been great.
question
I
is
can
about the question.
I can also highly recommend I can also highly recommend the action movie that Mr. Bautista made, based around West Ham's old stadium in Upton Park.
Wasn't that with like a big actor as well?
Um, I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to try and look that up. I'm not trying to think who was in it. Um, there was somebody relatively big in it, yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of interested now that with Batista going to conventions, do you think he'll get more recognized for Drax or being the rest of the Batista?
I think probably Drax, to be honest, because you know it's a sort of the MCU's probably
Outreach, yeah, true.
got a wider got a wider fan base than in wrestling.
He
But you
does
know,
seem, yeah, he just seems like a gent as well. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely,
before
absolutely.
before we get on to scores and wrap up, I know there's been a quick talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, but as me and John said, it's very difficult to go deep dive. I do want to talk about the relationship between Quill and his mother, because although she unfortunately dies very early in the movie, she's present throughout this film in a beautiful way via the awesome mixtape that that Quill uses, which was also given to Ryan's mother, and therefore the songs that are played kind of reflect what's going on at the moment. So you kind of get things like "Come and Get Your Love" when he's just dancing around because it's kind of like the start of him, going towards the love of his friends and family. You also get like more literal ones, like when he's escaping from prison. You hear "Escape," the Pina Colada song, and it's great. And then also you get you also get great songs. Another one which is very very on the nose is a fooled around and fell in love, which is when he's like trying to seduce Gamora
Yeah.
with his pelvic sorcery, as she words it. But no, it's just
Very
it's
good stuff, though.
yeah. Oh, I also one of the funniest jokes or every time still cracks me up is the Kevin Bacon thing because they just believe Kevin Bacon is like this massive superhero back on Earth, um, until Spider-Man comes and tells them otherwise in Infinity War. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I think my favourite song using it is towards the end. It's when they play "I Want You Back" by the Jackson Five, which is sort of pretty much going into the closing credits. But that's just one of my ultimate sort of feel good songs. And say when that kicks in, it's just like, hey,
yeah, you can't help but do a little bit of a groove, can you? Um,
no,
But
absolutely.
also for me, I think my favourite towards the end because I'm a massive fan of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. I think that is
Yeah.
a tune. So to have that as well is great. Obviously, Hooked on a Feeling, which kind of like the promotional song. It's not in it very much, but it is a bop. I do love the scene as well with the police guard listening to the tunes and Peter Quill goes up's mine and gets stung as the song comes in and he gets his revenge at the end with getting that guy. It's great. It's all good fun. But yeah, John. I mean, I don't think I really need an answer for you, but I'm going to ask, what would you give this out of 10, mate? What would you give it out of 10?
I mean, it's a 10 for me.
It's got to be, isn't
And
it?
you know how it works for me. I only ever come on if I'm going to give something a 10.
So far, so good. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know what we're gonna. We need to actually figure out what we're gonna do about the Royal Rumble because obviously we're doing predictions, but how we do reactions or something, we might have to do like a YouTube video instead of a podcast. I might have to go on for
Yeah,
20 minutes and
we
do
can have
it
a quick sort of
and
we
do
can
like
have a quick wash up.
yeah, because I feel like we might have to do like something on YouTube or something just to quickly, give the listeners our actual thoughts. Because obviously doing predictions is great, but then it'd be nice to see the aftermath, what we think.
Yeah.
Because a wrestling show is always in flux, so that might not be something you give a 10 out of 10. That might be something you give a really, middling
Yeah,
score. Or
I think I'd sort of go through it match by match, to be honest. And in terms of the Rumble, maybe even break it up a little further than that.
yeah,
And sort of a marking for the start, a marking for the main bit of the match, and a marking for the ending, so to speak.
yeah,
Because you're talking about like an hour of wrestling there
yeah.
with
I
with a lot that can happen.
For the listeners or viewers for this episode, I know this one hasn't had much discussion, but I can guarantee next week me and John will be going in, doing a deep dive into the Royal Rumble because there is a lot to discuss. Obviously, there's a lot of people that can
There is
win. There's
there's a lot going on.
yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on without the Rumble matches itself, and also I will be doing live reactions to the Royal Rumble on my YouTube channel as I watch it because the Royal Rumble is one of those where it's always it's always fun to just there's no crowd, so you ain't gonna watch them react to it, so you may as well sit and watch me buy a pizza or something and just enjoy the show. So I'll be doing that because I want to launch a YouTube channel while I've got the time, and I do. So I'm gonna do that. And also the Rumble is just you can't miss the Rumble. It's one. I do say it's more worth a watch than WrestleMania. It might be my favorite show of the year in terms of
It's
the rest.
it's certainly mine. It's certainly mine. I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've always preferred it to Mania. It's certainly my favourite show of the year.
Especially in the one day because Mania is too long. But then,
Yeah,
by the end of
yeah.
Mania, you begin to flag and go, all right, I've seen 5 hours already, Vince. You can turn it off now.
I mean, we all remember the 6 a.m. finish of 2 years ago.
Was it
Um,
was it really 6 a.m.?
something like
Jeez.
that.
Oh
Yeah,
god.
it was coming on for. It was coming on for.
Was that the one where
That was with the triple
Roman
threat.
versus oh what with Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it was a triple threat. Um,
that was a long
you
show.
know, well, we didn't see that coming. Yeah, we didn't see that coming when Lesnar versus Rollins was up first and finished in about 5 minutes.
That was a good mania. That on retrospect, that was a good mania. If it wasn't 10 hours
Oh,
long.
well, it really was. It really was. You know, it was a really good mania. But I really wish they'd done what they did last year and split it across 2 nights.
Yeah,
Um,
I think obviously it's a shame that the Rumble is going to be without a crowd this year. I think that's going to be the biggest felt one. I know obviously Mania without a crowd was also rubbish, but I think that without having to have the padding of the 10, 9, you like there's nothing like a crowd actually reacting to a comeback or a
yeah, it's going to be interesting whether to see whether they still throw in some surprises because I know we've talked previously, sort of between ourselves about the reaction that Edge got at last year's Rumble, and how actually it was brilliant for him that there was a crowd there, and you got to wonder how something like that would work, like
yeah.
in a Thunderdome where you've just got guys on screens and yeah, a bit of crowd noise, but not the same as
It's not the same as a
tens of
Slipjack or whatever
thousands,
his name is
tens of
from.
thousands of people
Yeah.
popping like hell.
Yeah, I mean that was. I mean, I got in trouble for that because I was living at home at the time. And it was like 2 a.m. I think that was the main event, and obviously I think there was a bit of rumor and innuendo about Edge coming back, but it's sort of the same as when you hear, "Oh, David Tennant's coming back in Doctor Who." You're like, "Yeah, funny rumor," and then you actually see it and you hear "You think you know me?" and I was like, "Ha!" At the time, I was a bit drunk. I was like, "What the fuck? What's going on here? It's crazy." It was just amazing. And Edge is one of the nice people as well, so it's good to see him actually, go out on his own terms a little bit. That'll be nice
He's
to see.
really, really great guy.
Have you? Because you've met him as well, haven't you? Have you?
Yeah, very briefly. Yeah, me and my sister actually got to do a 5 second pose with Edge and Christian for a
Just
photo.
yeah, just lovely guys, lovely guys. Anyway, though, John, thank you for joining me this week.
No
Are you doing anything in the middle week or anything you want to plug or anything like that? You got any
problem.
crazy tweets you plan to release or anything
I think. Not really, to be honest. All that I really want to say is, I think we all know that times are hard at the moment. Everybody do look after yourselves, look out for yourselves. If you need to speak to somebody, there are people out there for you to speak to, and there's always help available to you. Um, and I will be sharing Alex Kingdom's personal mobile number for anybody to call him up if there are any particular needs that you may
I don't actually think I have your mobile number, nor do you have mine. So
that you may have. Should they be financial, narcotic, or sexual?
I was worried for like 2 seconds, and I realized I don't have your number, and I don't think you have mine either. So I think I'm all right there.
I have my ways.
Yeah, I was, to be fair, you could just ask someone like Beef. Can I have Alex's number? It's crazy. Yeah, as we were saying though, I think it's important people to remember that we are going through probably the toughest time in the pandemic at the current times, but there is a way out at the minute. Things that
Yeah,
will get better slowly. It's just we're
and
unfortunately in that time where there's not been enough of that to take effect just yet.
that's all I really wanted to say. Just look after yourselves, people, because actually, yeah, look after yourselves and look after each other.
And I'm going to end it there. John, thank you for coming on so much. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers, buddy.